recently had a couple of days where the wind blew 40 miles an hour. And my wife and I decided it's a great time to travel across the state, so we took that 6-hour journey. And you know what? We really noticed some differences. When we went by certain farms, the wind blew right across the fields, right across the road, and they were just drifting and it was difficult to drive. And then we drove by other fields, and when we went by them, there was nothing blowing across the road. No snow, nothing. The fields were catching it. It was amazing the difference when stalks are left out in the fields.
Well, during our Farm Basics time today, we wanted to talk a little about wind erosion and the effect it has on farms all across our country and really across the world. I got a story too. When we were over in Ukraine, we learned about how they have trees up around just about every field that they've got there, and that went back to the Depression era, and Stalin just basically said, look, everybody's putting trees in.
Plant trees or die, I think was the decree.
So in the United States, we had to be a little more diplomatic in the Depression era. We put some trees in, but nothing like what they did over in Ukraine. So it was really interesting, and it's helped prevent wind erosion in a big way.
Well, if you've seen pictures of back in the 30s, how the wind just blew dust everywhere, and there were dust storms like crazy, it's amazing. We were over in Israel this year as well, and when we saw the dust blowing around, there was one day that was just hazy all over, and it was just a dust storm. And there's really no way, when all you have is sand dunes, to fix wind erosion. But when you have farm ground, you certainly can do some things to make wind erosion less of a problem.
So here's what farmers have done over the years. We talked about trees a little bit, and certainly that can be done, but what's even more important than that is leaving some residue out in the field, especially with high residue crops like corn and wheat. Soybeans, for example, they don't have a lot of residue. If a farmer plants soybeans, he's not going to be able to catch as much snow as if he was to plant corn or wheat and allow those stalks to stand through the wintertime.
When we talk about catching snow, this is a great thing for moisture conservation too. You can keep it in the fields rather than blowing in the ditches or across the roads when I'm trying to drive in the winter. But we're also concerned about the soil, because when you have topsoil that's blowing away, that's reducing your productivity on that land forever. So you really want to keep that topsoil where it belongs, and doing less tillage, allowing the root systems to be in place and leaving some residue on top of the ground to protect it from that wind is just a huge deal. It's smart for farming. It makes sense with raising better crops, but it's also smart environmentally, so you don't have all that soil blowing away from you.
Yeah, the only challenge that farmers have with this, okay, we said when you leave those stalks up, it's going to help prevent wind erosion, and it does. It also helps catch more snow. It may allow more moisture to get in the ground in those fields, which right away you would think, oh, that's a good thing because crops need a lot of moisture. But if you're in an area that's cold and wet all the time, it's really hard to get the crop planted and to get it growing well. So let's say, for example, you're in the state of North Dakota, it's really cold there, and you can't get all of your crop put in even because you have so much moisture out there, then it becomes a bad thing. So it's a fine line in some areas for we want to leave stalk and residue out in the field to catch snow to prevent wind erosion, but also we want to chew up enough so the ground starts to dry out and warm up a little bit too.
So there are a lot of different decisions that have to be made as far as cutting down on wind erosion. Obviously, leaving more residue out there will help prevent wind erosion and keep more soil in the field.
Well, one thing that leaving stalks out there won't do is control our weed of the week, but we'll tell you what will later in the show.